Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. And today we're looking at part 2 of the Sony Vaio VGC M1. If you haven't watched part 1 of the video, I suggest that you go and watch that first. I'll put a link down in the description so that you can find that easily. Just to recap where we were at the end of part 1, we had this non-working Sony Vaio, wouldn't power on, so we had to do a bit of a fix just to get it to power on there. And we had a corrupted Windows XP install. So using the recovery portion of the hard disk, we've got a fresh Windows XP install along with all the sort of bundled programs that Sony sees fit to include with this. There are still a few issues with the machine as we left it at the end of part 1. So let's have a look at those now and we'll see what we've done to solve them. Now the first problem was that this being a multimedia machine, or it's sold as a multimedia machine all in one, was that it should, or when it was new, it would have come with a remote control for controlling your media without having to come up and use a keyboard or a mouse. Didn't have one with it, but we do now. This remote control came straight off eBay. They're easy to find on there, there's plenty of them about, and best of all, it only cost a couple of quid, worked with the computer first time, didn't need to do any setting up or anything like that, piece of cake. The second problem was that the optical drive, which is here in the side of the machine, wasn't working. Back to eBay again to sort this out. This modular drive that Sony uses in here, they use it in quite a few of their other machines, so it was easy enough to get a replacement. Again, not too expensive. It installs just under the subwoofer, so it's only 2 more screws from what we stripped down in the first part of the video when we took the machine to bits. Did have to swap the faceplates over. The drive I got wasn't from one of these, so it had a different faceplate on. Piece of cake, couple of little screws to swap that over. That's slotted in, that's all now working okay, no problems. The little ribbon cable, which was the fault with our power button not turning the computer on, I haven't been able to source one of those. So the original fix that we did in part 1 is still in there. The RAM, there's 512 megs installed in this. Just to help things along, I've put an additional 512 megs into the second memory slot, so we've now got 1 GB of RAM installed. And it's had a thorough clean inside and out. The only issue left with cleaning it is, you may recall that there was a sort of wear mark, a line across the screen here and a couple of scratches. They show up better on lighter backgrounds. I've not been able to get those out of the screen, and I'm worried now that if I use anything more abrasive to try and get them out, I run more chance of actually doing more damage to the screen than what I could potentially get by maybe removing these. They don't show up too bad on the sort of medium and dark background, so for now we're just going to have to live with that. So I've been spending some time playing around on this machine and having a look at all the included software, which if I just bring up the start menu like we did in part 1, as we can see, with the exception of those few things down here which I've installed, Sony saw fit to include plenty of included software. Most of it, it's not very interesting, so I'm not going to bore you with it and show you all of it in this video. We'll just pick out a couple of highlights. The first of which is this, Sony Vaio Zone. This is the kind of all-in-one multimedia interface that works with your music, your pictures, your DVDs, your TV tuner, etc. It's the one that works with the remote so that we can navigate remotely, control the media remotely, and I guess it would have been the main sort of piece of included software that you'd use with this thing when people are buying this new. So I'm just going to pop a CD into the drive and we'll see how it works. As you saw there, when you've got a CD in, it'll automatically bring up the correct interface and start playing the tracks as you'd expect, and then you can use your remote to flick up and down between them, play different tracks, skip back and forth, etc, etc. Does exactly what you'd expect I guess, you know, a hi-fi or a multimedia PC to do with this. There's not a huge amount of functions on the remote, as you can probably see there. It's fairly basic, but it does the job. If you're just listening to some music from across the room, you need to mute it, volume, change track, whatever, it works fine for that. You can also use your remote to get down to these menus and tools at the bottom of the screen for changing various settings and whatnot, but it works fine. No complaints with this, other than that it's a little bit slow to respond. If I press down for next track, for example, it's just a little bit of a delay. It's a little bit slow sometimes, but it's not too bad. It's more than livable. There's one quirk, however, when it comes to listening to music on this thing. When I would put the new optical drive in and I was testing it, I picked up the first CD that came to hand to put in and play, and it happened to be this. This is Oasis's third album, Be Here Now. And for anybody who doesn't know, it's one of the loudest recorded albums that there's been. It was really it was released at the peak of the loudness war in the late 90s, and what that means is that when this album was produced, there's very little dynamic range in the music. There's not a lot of difference between the loud parts and the quiet parts. It's sort of a wall of sound mastering technique. And when I put it in to listen, it sounded really muddy. It sounded horrible. It was sort of clipping and distorted, and I'm thinking, flipping heck, I remember this being, you know, a loud album, but I don't remember it being this bad, surely. I took the back off, made sure I had all the speakers and everything plugged in correctly, but no, it still sounded horrible. The problem is with the software, and it's the default software that comes with this machine. When you play music through this Vaio Zone app, there is another app that runs in the background, which I'll show you, called this Sonic Stage Mastering Studio Audio Filter. And as the name suggests, it's sort of an equalizer that puts a load of effects, whatever ones you choose, onto your music. Now, I didn't mess with this and I didn't realise that it was doing this, but it was putting so many sort of equalizations and bass type passes onto the music that it just turned it into a muddy, distorted mess. It was causing these little speakers in here to distort, even at really low volumes. The annoying thing being, you cannot get to this using the remote, and you don't get to it through the Vaio Zone app. You have to go on to Start, like I've done here, and load it up, and then turn the damn thing off, or at least dial it down a bit so that it's not making your music all horrible and distorted. Now, I haven't messed with this, it was doing that by default, so quite why Sony saw fit to include that and have it doing that, I don't know. But just be aware that if you're going to listen to music or you watch your movies or whatever through this Vaio Zone app, you need to set this Sonic Stage equalizer utility up, otherwise it's going to sound horrible. Interestingly, it only applies to the Vaio Zone app. When I played the same CD via Windows Media Player, it sounded perfectly normal. And indeed, once you've got that either turned off or dialed in, everything sounds fine through Vaio Zone again. They just should have let you sort it out through the remote, or at least have something in Vaio Zone that lets you turn it on and off. Anyway, so that small annoyance aside, it's fine. I've had this on a few times where it's been playing music for us in the back of the room while we've been doing something else. Music utility on here, that just plays music either off a USB stick, a memory stick, or off your hard drive. Pictures, exactly what it says, looking through your pictures and your video. Live TV is handled through a separate app, but as I said in part 1, I can't show you that since this TV is analog input only, or this tuner input, sorry, is analog only, and there is no analog signal here in the United Kingdom. So unfortunately, we can't have a look at the live TV watching or DVR functionality of this, but given that the rest of this included software, at least for playback and whatnot, is operating perfectly competently. I would have thought that the built-in stuff for watching TV would too. Not fancy, but functional. Other than that, the rest of the included software, it's not particularly interesting. It's all stuff a lot of people have seen before. So we're not going to dive into that now, but let's see how this thing is at playing games. Right, here we are with the first game, and it's Deus Ex, released in the year 2000, a good 4 years before this computer was built. Now, I'm doing a bit of a voiceover for this in the edit, and that's because there's a problem. Not with the game runs exactly how it's supposed to. No, the problem's with me. But concentrating on the game first, as I say, it runs absolutely fine, as you'd expect for a game released that many years before the computer was. We've got a patch installed which gives us the full widescreen support, which means we're running at the full native resolution of the LCD screen on here. We've got all the graphics options turned up to full, and the computer's got no problems at all running this, and nor should it. You might see a little bit of sort of choppiness, on some of the movements in this footage. That's not there to the naked eye. I can only presume it's something to do with how the sensor in the camera is capturing the frames on the screen, but to my eyes it looks completely fluid. Likewise, the camera's also picking up the reflections off the screen and emphasising them a little more than, again, than I can see them. You may be able to see the tripod in the middle of the screen from time to time. They are there to the naked eye, but they're just not as bad as it looks here on the video. I've also got the brightness turned up quite high just to try and get everything to sort of come through. It's quite dark, a lot of this game, particularly, you can see there that sort of dark sky on this first mission. I'm just trying to make sure that all the details are being picked up. But yeah, plays absolutely fine. The problem that I was having was that this is one of my all-time favourite games. I've played through this game countless times, and even just trying to record this short clip here to get some footage for this video to see how this computer handles it, I was finding myself just getting sucked back into the game, despite what this sort of rather ropey gameplay would suggest. And instead of actually saying what it was like and saying anything useful, I was talking complete gibberish, or at least a lot more gibberish than usual. Hence the reason for this voiceover. But yep, game's all good. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, moving on to something a little newer. We have Unreal Tournament 2003, one of my favourite series of games, the Unreal Tournament ones. And despite the name, it was late on 2002 when I think this was released. So again, I'm not expecting this machine to have any problems playing this. Just a quick look here in the graphical settings. Native resolution of the LCD panel, 32-bit colour. Detail and whatnot's bumped up nice and high, so let's jump into a match and see how that works. Oh, let's have 6 bots, why not? Play. When it came out, I seem to remember a lot of people playing this over the original, but now I don't know, maybe it's just me, it doesn't seem to have the sort of following, the sort of love that the original one gets, and Unreal Tournament 2004. This one seems a little bit, well, this one and UT3, they seem a little bit like the sort of, not the black sheep of the family, but certainly perhaps the less loved siblings of the family. Oh, and it's very apparent that I have forgot this map. Now with everything turned on, this is a little bit jerky to be honest. I think as soon as I die, which I'm no doubt about to do, these bots are not on a difficult level obviously. Go away you. You know what? There we go. Just kill me. Let's have a look at that, because with all those, with the full resolution and the full details, it's just struggling a little bit there. Let's bump down just to normal on texture detail, world detail, character detail here. Let's try that and see if that improves things. If not, we might have to drop the resolution. It's a little bit better, definitely. I mean, this sort of game, you know, you want a high frame rate. Why the heck are you supposed to go on here? I cannot remember. Yeah, that's still a little bit jerky. Let's rocket launcher. That was a mile off. Wait till I die in a moment, and then let's see if turning the resolution down a little bit more helps. Oops. What am I doing here? Anyway, settings. Let's drop this down now. The next one is not a widescreen resolution, so we're not going to get this going full screen. We're going to have the black bars down either side. But yeah, let's try that. Keep settings. Surely this should run okay now. Oh, that's a lot better. That's a lot smoother. It seems full detail and full resolution. We're just pushing it a little bit here, and we've run a game that's still a couple of years before this thing was made, so I think already we're starting to see some of the limitations of this thing's GPU. Yeah, no worries with this. I could sit here and play this game for a while. Probably will end up doing exactly that. Try and remember some of these maps. Why is it not auto? There we go. That's better. No, I don't want to go up there. Oh, I do not have much health. Where's the health on this map? But yeah, happy with that. That runs okay like that. Let's move on to the next game and push things a little bit further. Okay, next up, moving forward in time to 2005. June 2005, I think this came out on Windows platforms. It's Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Okay, so looking at advantage, you can see draw distances on about medium. Other than that, we've got no anti-aliasing on. Let's go the same resolution that we just tried Unreal Tournament at. See how we go at that. Now, this is a game that I've not played an awful lot of. So I'm probably going to be even worse at this than I was at UT, but not to worry, we'll try. Hey, we've got a bike, we are off. Where am I going? Oh, that's quite sensitive. Oh, I'm following that little thing on the map. Yeah, that's already that feels quite choppy. And we've not even got a whole lot going off. It's not like we've got a load of enemies on the screen or there's a massive firefight or anything, so straight away I think we'll have to bump down that resolution. Let's drop back to wow, I can go right up to that. Anyway, let's drop back to 800 by 600.
That's a lot better. It's really highlighting as how we get newer in you know, how we get further forward in time from when the games were released. How it's showing up this, it's showing up the limitations of this graphics card more and more. I mean, we're only a game a year after this machine was released, and we're down at 800 by 600 resolution. And yeah, sure, back then we weren't running anything like the sort of monster resolutions that we do today. But it's whoops, that looked painful. Get back on. It still feels a little bit disappointing to be running down at this resolution. Oops, I've gone the wrong way. It'd be interesting to see what this PC could have done if they'd just given us something a little bit more powerful. Guess I'm going in here. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fine. I could sit and play this game like this. Guess we're biking after that guy. Tap the pedal. Oh, we're button mashing. Is this Daley Thompson's Decathlon? Yeah, it's running okay. Sound on this thing is nothing to write home about. We're getting into this era of integrated sound chips which start getting a little bit generic. One sort of seems to fade into the other a little bit.
It would have been frustrating, I think, to have had this at the time and to have a computer that's only a year old here, already struggling a bit in some ways to run the latest, you know, some of the latest games. I appreciate this is marketed very much as a, you know, the sort of all-in-one multimedia type box, you know, listen to your music on it, watch your TV, etc. But it's a PC. I mean, for a lot of people, if we're not doing work on them as some description, or if we're not surfing the internet, we're playing games. Anyway, that's enough GTA. Let's get that shut down and see what we can move on to. Or as the case may be, not move on to. The next game that I was going to try was just a year later. It was going to be this, Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. 2006, if I remember. But I'm afraid it's a big fat no. We'll not be running this. This GPU, this graphics card, is not supported by this game. So here we are. 2 years have passed since you bought your brand spanking shiny new Vaio PC. And we've already come to a game that we can't play on it. Looking at the ATI cards on here, the lowest supported card at the time of release is the 9600. And as we have the Mobility Radeon 9200 on here, I'm afraid that's a bit of a no-go before we start. And as for the age-old question, can it run Crysis? Well, nope, absolutely not. For starters, it needs 256 meg of video memory, which we don't have. I'm not sure if this graphics card would do it if it did have that amount of memory, but it doesn't, so we can't. Okay, so let's move back to a game from November 2003 and give this Vaio a bit of an easier time running it. A game that is in many ways similar to the game that we've just played, but this one is of course Simpsons Hit and Run. So what do I think about this Sony Vaio? Well, I actually really like it. I mean, I didn't think much of it actually when I first got hold of it and I first started messing about with it, but the more time I've spent using it and the more I've got to know it, the more it's grown on me. Sure, it's got its annoyances and its quirks, like the fact that it's not got a built-in mouse, even though everything else is built in. But all of its quirks, they're easily either livable with or they're easily overcome. Like the mouse, for example, you just plug an external one in, not too big a deal. And even though it struggles with games from around 2005 and newer, that still leaves a huge library of classic games from before then that it plays with no problems at all. I haven't experienced any crashes or hangs with this thing or anything like that. The weird styling, I quite like the weird style, and it's grown on me. It's a bit different, a bit weird, and it's nice to see something that's a bit different, especially at a time when we were transitioning with computer styling and everything was sort of transitioning to a bit samey and a bit similar, so it was nice to see something different. The built-in sound, yeah, it's probably as good as built-in sound as you're going to get. Still not as good as a pair of external speakers, but it's got it built in. You don't need to worry about that. That's fine. And all these things, they add up to giving it a sort of an endearing quality. It's a bit like a pet dog that's the runt of the litter, in that it's a bit rubbish, but you still like it anyway. But for now, I'm just going to say I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give me a like or a subscribe. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.